Greetings, comrades. Hope this finds you well. Quick shout out to INN, Indian News Network, which I am a part of. Definitely follow them on all these social media platforms. So some of you may already know that Bill Gates, the billionaire supervillain that he is the largest private farmland owner in the United States. I believe it's 270,000 acres. That's problematic for, a number of reasons. Billionaires shouldn't exist. Obviously, nobody should have that amount of wealth and resources that they can, have that massive amount of land and wealth. I believe it's spread over 18 states. So obviously people just shouldn't be able to have that level of, wealth and control over something as important and vital to our existence as farmland, as being able to grow food to eat. Kind of important. He's also a huge proponent of GMOs. He has claimed that it will end, starvation and hunger around the world, particularly in Africa. Huge proponent of GMOs. GMOs are hugely problematic for a number of reasons, as Vandana Shiva points out. We'll show a clip from her in a little bit. It's patenting life. It's patenting life itself. And, the only thing GMOs are good for is to pad the, bank accounts of companies like, Monsanto and Cargill. And it allows, these huge, massive monoculture farms to be able to use more, pesticides, herbicides, Roundup, etc., because there's no diversity. It's just, literally hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of acres of the same thing. And that's obviously very, problematic. You need, that diversity to keep these, systems in check. So GMOs allow, Roundup resistant corn, Roundup resistant soybeans, etc. And Gates is a huge proponent of that. So, and again, he said, even in this article that I'll link down below, the reason that he got invested in buying all this farmland is to increase his profits, to increase his wealth, right? So let's listen to this reporter talk about this story.
Software developer, philanthropist, nation's largest farmland owner. Yeah, you heard that right. Gates owns nearly 270,000 acres of farmland in the U.S. Who knew? NBC News investigative tech reporter April Glazer joining me now. April, you're reporting Bill Gates started buying land in 2013 through a web of limited liability shell companies across the country. Tell us what he's got.
I mean, there is a lot of land, and it's over about 18 different states, right? So we're talking about 70,000 acres in North Louisiana, around the Delta region, 14,000 acres in Florida, over 40,000 acres in Arkansas, over 14,000 acres in Washington. So it really just spans the country, and it is a lot of land. Now, the Land Report, a website that really looks at this, was the ones that found that he owned the most amount of land, farmland in the country, but then we went and verified and found out exactly what he's growing there.
It's all a bunch of food, grown, really unsustainable methods, not grown organically, anything like that. He's growing like potatoes for fucking McDonald's.
Yeah, so let's talk about what are we eating? What is he growing
Carrots.
On Gates farmland?
Right, and I should clarify, he's not actually the one doing the farming. He's more like a landlord, right? So he acquired all this land.
He's making everybody else do all the work, and he's reaping the benefits. Typical capitalist.
And then other companies are doing the farming on it. And a lot of this is kind of big ag, right? So in Florida, we've got...
Because Gates is a huge proponent of big agriculture and GMOs, which pollute the environment and harm farmers.
In Georgia, there are Vidalia onions. Now he's actually sold.
Why?
I'm over here. How many how many acres does he have?
270,000.
Comes to another farmer in Georgia.
That'd
He
be
did have
great.
those for some time.
No, you don't need
in
that
Louisiana,
much.
we're looking at soybeans, rice, cotton, soybeans in Nebraska. And then what's I think most interesting is...
Which, A lot of GMO soybeans being grown in the United States for food and also to feed animals, right?
That in Washington state, in the southern border, right above Oregon, he has a 14,500 acre plot of land that is growing the potatoes that turns into French fries.
So huge, massive farm there. That's definitely not being grown organically. Probably doing a lot of tillage, using a lot of sprays, pesticides, etc. Detrimental for the natural system there, the soil health, the insects, the plants, the animals, and then obviously all those chemicals are going into that food that the people eat in their McDonald's French fries, right?
For McDonald's. So that's something we really didn't expect, especially because he's so committed to public health.
He's not committed to public health. He's committed to private wealth. That's Bill Gates.
Gates has said that his farming investments, April, have nothing to do with his broader plans to save the climate. So what's going on here?
Because he has no fucking plan to save the planet. Again, as he points out, and I think she's going to get to his answer here, that he's doing this to make money. He sees it as a investment to increase his already massive, obscene wealth.
Why is he buying up all this farmland?
Well, he's not the only one doing it. He actually is using the farmland as an investment vehicle. And the idea here is that, since we're
is just disgusting on so many levels. Any basic necessity, any material need that people need to survive and have a decent life should not be privatized, should not be seen as an investment. That obviously includes food. And in this article, April also points out this is really problematic to small scale farmers, small scale growers who are trying to do it the right way, trying to grow organically, trying not to use pesticides and herbicides, trying to keep the soil happy, trying to grow food biodynamically, trying to not till, etc. Makes it a lot harder for them to compete when there's these huge, massive farmland owners out there like Gates with thousands, tens of thousands of acres who are able to, grow all this food with all these chemical, inputs, chemical fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, etc. It basically prices them out of the market because they're not going to be able to compete with these freaking huge, massive, big ag, operations, right? It's just problematic on every level except for Gates because he's making a shit ton of money from it.
Not ever going to make any more land. It's a pretty good investment, right? And so when the stock market is going down or the rest of the economy is on a roller coaster, land generally doesn't depreciate. So it's a pretty safe place to park your money. Other large financial firms have really started to encourage investors to put their money into farmland. And yeah, he's not using it as part of his broader climate goals. The foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, confirmed that their agricultural work does not focus in the United States. He is, however,
God, he's such a ghoul, right? All these these billionaires, just this super villainous characters.
Not him, but his investment firm Cascade is a partner with a group that does work on sustainable agriculture here in the United States. But they didn't clarify exactly what's going on those pieces of land, but that all of his acreage.
Yes, I'm sure that 14,000 acre potato farm is being run very fucking sustainably, growing potatoes for McDonald's French fries. Yeah, give me a fucking break.
Sustainable agriculture program. Local farmers I spoke to in South Georgia and North Florida said that he's doing the same thing that Big Ag did before he got there, which is using a lot of fertilizer that leaches into
pollutes the water, yes,
causes big algae blooms, and actually is very ruinous for the habitats of manatees and fish.
Probably wasn't expecting him to say that.
You're writing that non-farmer rather investments in farmlands, like what we're seeing here with Bill Gates, could be bad for young farmers.
Yes,
why? What's going on with them specifically?
Yes, she's probably going to get to the point I was making. Maybe do it a little more eloquently than I did, but let's see.
Specifically.
Right. And so that's just to be clear, I can't say it enough. Bill Gates isn't the one in overalls. He's not the one on the tractor doing the farming.
Of course, he ain't made out for that shit. You couldn't fucking survive a day doing that.
And so for young farmers, for people who really want to break into this, it's very, very hard to buy land already because
it's fucking expensive. And then you got to be able to figure out how to grow the food. And if you're trying to do it, organically, even if it's not certified organically, if you're just growing it naturally.
And you have to buy all the products and everything like
Figure
that.
out how to sell it, who to sell it to, processing, marketing, etc. Like there's a lot that goes into being able to grow and sell food and make that your livelihood. And these huge, massive farms that Bill Gates, owns and funds make it a lot more difficult for these small family farms to exist at any level, right?
There's a limited amount of farmland. Like I said, they're not making any more of it. So when they're going up against these billionaire investors and people who are looking at farmland as an asset class, it becomes really hard for them. I mean, who can compete with the likes of Bill Gates, right? And so more and more we're seeing farmers turn into renters, and less we're seeing people who own their land actually doing the farming on it.
And
that is a trend that might increase because about 40% of farmland in the U.S. is owned by people who are 65 and older, which means that there's a pending large transfer of land, and that could be gobbled up by an investor
people
class,
like fucking
or
Gates.
it could be sold to young farmers. But
they're able
usually
to.
people go for the highest price.
Makes sense. April, this was a fascinating story. I never thought that.
Well, that is super interesting, and I'll link the story down below. I've read through the whole thing. It's pretty lengthy, but it's definitely worth reading. I mean, just look at that. Just disgusting. Nobody should be able to have this amount of influence in any sector of society, particularly farming and growing food. And again, Gates isn't doing anything good in this arena, just supporting big ag. Yeah, so not surprising, but let's check out Vandana Shiva on why GMOs are bad, because again, Bill Gates is a huge proponent of GMOs. Bill Gates' radical menu for food systems, ultra-processed foods, patents, monocrops. Vandana Shiva explains why GMOs are death knell to biodiversity and farming. Again, the solution to growing sustainable food is small-scale agriculture, supporting small farms, growing food for your family in your backyard in a container pot, community-supported agriculture, your local pea patch garden, food forest, guerrilla gardening, etc. It's not these big fucking ag operations that Bill Gates supports.
Is a death knell for biodiversity. Biodiversity means the integrity of life. GMOs mean appropriating life to own it and patent it. And because there are patents related to GMOs, and the only reasons GMOs are being introduced
to make money,
is to own seeds and collect rents and royalties, corporations push the handful of crops that they have genetically
soybeans,
modified.
corn.
So you can
cotton.
see in the last few years, cropping systems have been reduced to corn and soya and cotton and canola, when we have cultivated and eaten thousands of crop varieties and species. The uniformity and monocultures that are being pushed by GMOs are driving out diversity directly, but they're driving out diversity because instead...
you just look at all the stuff that has corn or soybeans in it at the store, and her point rings very true. If you just look at the labels, particularly of processed foods in the United States, how ubiquitous those GMO crops are.
Of using less more efficiently, which they always claim,
but they don't.
Using more efficiently.
But they don't.
They're having to invade the Amazon. They're having to invade the grasslands of Argentina for a very expansive and wasteful agriculture. And when you spray Roundup on Roundup-ready crops,
it goes into the atmosphere.
Food and diversity. When you plant Bt cotton seeds, you're killing the bees and the pollinators and the soil organisms.
Kind of important.
GMOs are a recipe for ecocide, but they're not just a recipe for ecocide.
GMOs are a recipe for ecocide.
And the destruction of biodiversity. They are also killing our farmers. 284,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. Most of them in the areas where cotton is
And because they have to pay back these royalties for using these seeds, right? And then they get in trouble if they plant them
grown,
again.
95% of the cotton is now genetically modified, owned and controlled by Monsanto. The farmers are dying because Monsanto is making profits by owning life which it never created but pretends to create. That is why we need to reclaim the seed. That is why we need to get rid of GMOs.
100%.
That is why we have to stop patenting of life.
Damn. Absolute fire. And again, Gates is a huge proponent of GMOs, right? Of patenting life because it makes him money. It makes companies like Monsanto money. Yeah. Gates and his agribusiness industry partners are proposing to transform our food, how it's produced. I mean, look at all this. Cargill, Moderna, Bayer. He probably, supports Monsanto as well. Doubling down on monoculture. That's not the fucking solution. Jesus Christ.
It's definitely not.
Gates has influenced the direction of agriculture to benefit the corporates, said Milan Balai, coordinator of Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, AFSA, a coalition of 50 African-based groups. His foundation has contributed hugely in weakening our seed, biosafety, and agrochemical-related regulations. It will take years to undo what they have done. Gee, look at that. Yeah. So Gates is fucking trash. This is just another example of, why we do not need billionaires, why we do not need capitalism in the United States and in the world, because you end up with disgusting things like people like Bill Gates owning 270,000 acres of farmland as a investment when food should be a human right and not commodified, and we should not be patenting life and leading to ecocide, through GMOs, which Bill Gates is a huge proponent of,
I
right?
have a question though.
What?
Isn't this a good question? I'm 11 years old. I know not to freaking do that. And he's how old?
He's in his 60s, I think.
He's 60 and he does nothing basically. Just saying.
Yeah, well, he's got a lot of money and he uses it for all these evil purposes. So
Of course he does.
that's Bill Gates for you.
At least if I was
Even
a billionaire,
even 11-year-old Randy gets it.
he calls me Randy. But I'm 11 years old and I do more stuff than he does. So. Also, if I was a billionaire, I would give to the homeless. I would get a garden because I know you like gardening and everything. But I'd also give most of those crops to the homeless and buy stuff for them.
Well, billionaires shouldn't exist. So if you're a billionaire, you shouldn't have that much money either.
Well, yes, Todd. I'm meaning though, if I was one, Todd,
You'd do better stuff with it.
Yes, instead of doing nothing, making people do stuff for me.
Yeah, he's a butthead.
I like driving.
Like the video. If you like the video, subscribe for more content. Quick shout out to the 2 Uber comrades supporting my channel, my partner, and Indie Left News. Not her, she's not an Uber comrade, but shout out to her anyways, but not an Uber comrade shout out. So